Good day, every delegate around the world. Now we are in breakout rooms.
Today we gather under the theme in solidarity for a green world to address some of the most pressing issues surrounding climate change, international cooperation, and sustainable development. We are your hosts. I'm Janet.
I'm Melody.
I'm Melody. Before we begin, we would like to outline the agenda for this meeting. We will start with a brief introduction, followed by opening speech. Next, we will proceed a moderate context focus on our theme for today. Throughout the conference, we will engage in open discussion on crucial issues, including climate change, carbon credit system, and national adaptation plans. Let us begin call the role of the participating countries.
Roll call. I will now call the roll. Please confirm your presence as your country is named. South Korea,
Present.
Germany,
Present.
Slovakia,
Present.
Senegal,
Present.
South Africa,
Present.
Argentina,
Present.
Philippines,
Present, ma'am.
Canada,
Present.
Saudi Arabia,
Present.
Japan. Thank you, delegates. With that, let's now proceed to the opening speech.
For the opening speech, we will have the following speakers. For all speakers only have 1 minute to speak. Let's begin with South Korea.
Greetings, esteemed judges and delegates. Just as the climate crisis knows no bound, we should not either. When working together to fight climate crisis, as quoted by former President Moon Jae-in, the Republic of Korea is deeply concerned about the escalating impacts of climate change. Despite our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we are experiencing firsthand the consequences of a warming planet. Over the past 30 years, we have witnessed a significant increase in extreme weather events. Droughts have intensified, summer rainfall has surged, and sea levels have risen at a rate of 0.025 Celsius annually. To combat these challenges, we have established a robust legal framework, including the 2021 Framework Act on Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth. This law empowers both central and local governments to develop and implement adaptation strategies. We are proud to share that our efforts have yielded results, with a notable 1.15% reduction in our carbon emission rates. The Republic of Korea remains committed to international cooperation and sustainable development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Next speakers present Germany.
Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Namason Gibra from Mathayom Sati Revansi Mahara School. So today I want to talk about how climate change is seriously affecting public health in Germany. Especially with heat waves becoming hotter and lasting longer, these heat waves are more dangerous than other natural disasters. People who work outdoors face high health risks during extreme heat, so we need to find ways to protect them as soon as possible. Early warning system and public awareness campaigns can help reduce this risk. With technology and AI, we can make a weather forecast more accurate. Educating community is also key. Campaigns can teach people how to protect themselves from heat-related illness. These are also crucial for helping vulnerable people stay safe. And we need more research to understand how climate change affects to our health, especially as it also impacts biodiversity, which is essential to our well-being. Finally, even though climate change is a global problem, the best solution often starts locally. When communities and health officials work together, they can make a real difference in keeping people stay safe and healthy as the climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Then let's welcome the speaker represent Argentina.
Hello everyone, today I want to briefly highlight Argentina climate situations and issues.
Then let's welcome the speaker represent Slovakia.
Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, Slovakia fully supports global efforts to scale up climate finance, recognizing the urgent need for sustainable, predictable, and scaled resources. As an active member of the European Union, we are committed to the collective target of mobilizing 100 billion annually for developing countries and believe that the new collective quantified goal should build upon this legacy. Slovakia stresses that the execution must reflect the ambition of the Paris Agreement by agreeing the varied needs of mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, while ensuring accountability and transparency in financing mechanisms. Carbon markets play a vital role in achieving cost effective emission reductions. Slovakia advocates for a robust, transparent, and credible carbon credit system that prevents double counting, promotes high integrity carbon credit, and supports sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Next, we will welcome the delegates from Senegal.
Good morning, and Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates. Senegal stands before you as one of the nations most vulnerable to the devastating impacts of climate change. Rising sea levels threaten to swallow our coasts, while unpredictable rainfall endangers our agricultural section. Our fisheries are under immense strain as well. By 2080, temperatures are said to increase, whereas rainfall is said to decrease further. Now, through innovative programs like our solar powered water systems and the Green ESP plan, we aim to achieve 40% renewable energy by 2030. We are not stagnant and instead are actively participating in international partnerships such as Feed the Future, which are helping preserve marine biodiversity and securing food supplies. International partnerships have brought clean energy to over 8,500 families, cutting CO2 emissions by 484 tons. Therefore, Senegal is actively taking steps to ensure that the climate situation does not get out of hand. However, we cannot stand in this journey alone, and we require extreme climate funding, and we call upon the global community to help support us in our pledge against climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Then let us welcome the speaker who represents South Africa.
Good day, everyone. I'm a student from Yame Senior High School. also a delegate from South Africa. Let's start. South Africa is a developing country facing severe impacts from climate change, experiencing frequent droughts, extreme temperature, and water scarcity. Despite contributing minimally to global emissions, we bear the brunt of the consequences of climate change. In light of this, we urge wealthy nations to take concrete action across various issues to ensure sustainable development for all. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Then let us welcome the speaker represent Argentina.
Hello everyone, today I want to briefly highlight Argentina's climate situations and actions being taken to address it. Climate change is already having devastating effects in Argentina according to scientific projections. If we follow a high emissions pathway, we can expect a 65% increase in the frequency of agricultural droughts by 2015, a heat wave that will last over 47% longer. The economic implications are struggling by 2100. Argentina could lose about 8% of GDP due to a combination of rising sea level and extreme weather.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Next speaker present Philippines.
Mabuhay! The Philippines is one of the most climate vulnerable nations, faces an average of 20 typhoons each year, with storms intensifying due to climate change. Our regions in the Philippines suffers consecutive devastation, forcing residents into repeated evacuations and leaving rescuers overwhelmed. These challenges stretch the country's already limited resources, making the recovery even harder for a developing nation. Despite allocating 1.14 trillion pesos for flood control projects since 2015, there are still no visible results, leaving communities vulnerable and the trust in the government eroding. Meanwhile, natural ecosystems that protect us from disasters are at risk, with unsustainable solutions only worsening the crisis. Now, it's time to stand united for our country and our future. Maraming salamat.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Then let us welcome the speaker presenting Canada.
Greetings. Canada is not excused in facing environmental challenges given its position as a major producer, consumer, and exporter of energy. Since 2020, Canada has strengthened its climate efforts under its Healthy Environment and a Healthy Economy plan that focuses on a healthier economic growth and environmental preservation. The country has already implemented stricter building codes, supporting clean technologies and renewable energy, and the phase out of coal fired electricity. The government is also pushing for clean fuel standards for vehicles, carbon pricing, and alternatives to diesel. This initiative have reduced Canada's emission and have met its reduction targets. Canada's government is fully committed to working with all the Canadians to achieve its 2030 goals. Canada is moving forward as one in building a sustainable future because our actions today will shape the world of tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. So please speak on the behalf of the Saudi Arabia.
Dear Chair, esteemed delegates, as a delegate of Saudi Arabia, we're more than pleased to be within this committee. And we have to tell that the climate situation is a reality that all of us must be facing together, for it is not just our problem. As of today, the Intergovernmental Panel on the Climate Change shows that without any intervention from our side, average temperatures in our region, which is like Middle East, will raise 2.6 Celsius degrees by mid-century. This will have severe implications for a country that is already having a lot of problems with climate, as you can imagine, which is desertification. But this is obviously not just our problem. Our kingdom has taken many initiatives, such as the Saudi Green Initiative, the Middle East Green Initiative, have planted around 10 billion trees in the kingdom, and has reduced the carbon emissions by 287 million tons. But that is not the point. For now, we urge all the leaders to take this matter seriously, and we sincerely hope that we can reach a consensus to save our planet, because it's just not just the Middle East. Tomorrow it will be your country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then, let us welcome the speaker represent Japan.
Okay, delegates, I will talk about our question and action. First of all, I will talk about the implementation of Japan. Japan geographical location and the second regional climate in the world country. Japan is the most climate like summer. Japan are warm and humid. Winters are cold and snowy. However, in fact, along with the effects of global warming, Japan has also been affected with the negative consequences of the climate change. That's why we are Japan are taking some action to prevent this situation. Transition to renewable energy, Japan is trying to reduce dependence on the fossil fuels by investing in the renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, and geothermal energy. Energy efficiency policies are taken to increase the energy efficiency of buildings and industrial facilities. Electric vehicles incentivize and investment are being made to encourage the rise of electric vehicles. Thanks for listening.
Okay, next, let us proceed to the conference rules. Conference rules. We will follow a moderate format for today's discussion. Each delegate will have two maximum of 2 minutes to speak. The moderate classes will last for 10 minutes, followed by a 5-minute open Q&A section. Please adhere strictly to the time limits.
Topic 1. Climate Finance and the UNFCCC Problem. Our first issue today addresses climate finance and the new collective quantified goal NCQG problem.
For more information, we would like to welcome Rita take it away.
When countries signed the Paris Agreement in 2015, they decided to set a new climate quantified goal on climate finance to replace the existing goal of 100 billion per year. The NCQG is meant to be adopted this year at COP29 in Azerbaijan. Funds from parent national or international securities are used to help countries that are severely affected by climate change reduce carbon emissions and fight the climate crisis. They also help deal with the harm caused by climate change, restore nature and land, and improving climate adaptation and resilience. As of 2020, in 7 countries have proposed equitable climate financing, including Sweden, France, Norway, Japan, and Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark. However, deliberations on the new goal have been slow to date. Negotiators have yet to reach consensus on foundational questions from the dollar amount of gold of which countries should contribute. The new question is, do you agree that rich countries should stop using fossil fuels faster and give more money to developing countries to help them switch to clean energy? If you agree, please raise your green card. If you disagree, please raise your red card. In 3, 2, 1, go. Nine countries say they agree, while nine countries say they agree. Thanks for your deliberate.
For the first question, we will have the following speakers. For each speaker, you only have 2 minutes to speak. Let's begin with South Korea.
Esteemed delegates and judges, the Republic of Korea stands united with the global community in the urgent task of addressing climate change. The science is unequivocal. The continued reliance on fossil fuels is pushing our planet to the brink. It is imperative that we accelerate the transition to clean energy sources and prioritize climate justice. Developed nations, historically responsible for the majority of greenhouse gas emissions, bear a significant burden of responsibility. They must lead by example and commit to rapid decarbonization. This includes setting ambitious targets, investing heavily in renewable energy research and development, and phasing out fossil fuel subsidies. As a contributor of climate change globally, the ROK has put in its best effort to reduce emissions by 1.15%. Moreover, that it is essential that developed countries provide sustainable finance and technological support to developing nations. This support is crucial for enabling these countries to leapfrog traditional fossil fuel based development and adopt sustainable low carbon pathways. By investing in clean energy infrastructure, building, and climate adaptation measures, we can help vulnerable communities build resilience and secure a sustainable future. The Republic of Korea is committed to playing its part in this global effort. We have implemented ambitious climate policies, invested in renewable energy, and promoted energy efficiency. However, we recognize that the challenges we face are immense and collective action is essential. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Next speakers present Germany.
All right, thank you for the question. So I agree rich countries should stop using fossil fuels faster and give more money to developing countries. Fossil fuels aren't renewable and also cause harm to not only people but also the environment, as it contributes to greenhouse gases. Even if it is cheaper, it is better to slowly transition to cleaner energy and stop using fossil fuels. Developing countries need the financial support from rich countries to switch to said clean energy. Germany here is also helping funding the developing countries as part of the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Then let us welcome the speaker represent Argentina.
From Argentina perspective, we strongly believe that wealthy countries must phase out fossil fuel faster and provide more funding to help developing nations transition to clean energy. Rich nations have historically contributed the most of greenhouse gas emissions and now have a responsibility to resist countries like Argentina. We experience frequent droughts and floods that threaten our agriculture and economy by 2050. Rising sea level could expose 200,000 people to devastating flooding without proposed actions. Investing in climate resistant infrastructure along we along along carbon path is glory. However, we love funding and technology to make these transitions.
Okay, thank you, delegates. So please speak on behalf of the Slovakia.
Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, yes, I agree. Slovakia strongly supports the equitable distribution of climate finance to ensure that all nations, especially developing countries, can transition to clean energy and adapt to the changing climate. The new collective quantified goal must reflect the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and the respective capabilities. Slovakia agrees that wealthier nations with historically higher emissions should expedite their transition away from fossil fuels. These countries bear a greater responsibility to lead by example in phasing out unsustainable practices. Slovakia supports the development of a timeline for high income countries to achieve fossil fuel reduction targets, complemented by clear commitments to financing mechanisms that aid developing nations in adopting renewable energy solutions. However, Slovakia emphasizes the need for accountability and transparency in climate finance. While Slovakia advocates for increased contributions from developed nations, it also calls for mechanisms to ensure that funds are used efficiently and reach their intended beneficiaries. The NCQG should prioritize investment in renewable energy technologies, capacity building, and infrastructure development in developing countries to accelerate their energy transition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Finally, I would like to invite a speaker represent Senegal.
Senegal stands behind the statement that rich countries should stop using fossil fuels and instead provide climate funding to developing countries instead. This is because fossil fuels, as we all know, contributes greatly to the climate issue at hand. Senegal bears the impact of this climate change in reality. While we have contributed minimally to global emissions, we are bearing the brunt of the impacts. Rising sea levels, droughts, unpredictable weather patterns that threaten our agriculture and food and water security. Rich countries must accelerate their transition away from fossil fuels as they are historically responsible for the most emissions. Senegal itself faces a multitude of climate related issues as a result of disproportionation. Furthermore, the rich countries must honor their commitment to climate finance by providing more funds to helping developing nations like Senegal switch to renewable energy. These funds will be used by Senegal to fuel multiple programs such as the Green ESP program, the GETP partnership, etc. Moreover, climate funding to Senegal will be crucial for investing in solar, wind, and other clean energy solutions. By doing so, the developing countries can ease transition into renewable energy and thereby create a more sustainable, cleaner, and greener environment for not only itself but for countries all around the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates.
Now it is open Q&A for 5 minutes. All delegates have the chance to ask questions and even share their country stand among our key speakers on topic. If you want to speak, please use the raise hand feature and wait for the host to recognize you before you can speak. This house is now for the open Q&A session.
Okay, Saudi Arabia, please ask your question.
Okay, we just wanted to ask. This is like an opening, like open session, right? Like we can just talk about the topic as a general, like quick Q&A kind of. Anyway, if we didn't understand the procedure incorrectly, we would like to ask the other delegates if they truly think that global actions have proven to be sufficient, considering that we have, like as a whole global world, we have prepared many actions, we are taking many initiatives as well. But as Saudi Arabia, we think that global actions have failed spectacularly. spectacularly, and we support shifting towards a more local plan. So we'd like to ask their opinions on that. If we didn't understand the procedure incorrectly, that is.
Okay, please. The South Korea answer the question.
Chair, I did not understand the question. Could you repeat the question?
Okay, my speaker is kind of bad. Do we have to accept the question? If so, yes, we accept any questions.
Sorry, Saudi Arabia, can you say again your question to South Korea?
After my question, apologies for any inconveniences. Yeah, I'm repeating my question. Yeah, our question. Okay, if we didn't understand the procedure correctly, and if this is like an open Q&A, we ask a question to the other delegates if they think global initiatives are better than local plans. That is the question we have. Thank you.
Please, South Korea answer the question.
The delegate of Republic of Korea would like to remark on this question that global actions are taken very oftenly and they fail as a result. As according to you, right? The question is. So I feel that local actions are more or less it's very beneficial for the country itself. If we take local actions, it is less costly for the country, and it gives us more results. But if we take global actions, we need a lot of finance to get it done and implement it and get a result out of it. So it's better if we get local actions instead of global actions. That's what my remark is. Thank you.
Okay. We'll just answer, make a rebuttal to this with the remaining 40 seconds. And we would like to say, like, to the statement where global initiatives are more broad and they're more inclusive and more modern, that claim may be true. And like global action, like many voices and many support, that is very true. But we have to consider that such a wide scope of things usually fails. But that a plan that fits Philippines might not be suitable for the Middle East region, both for logistical, social, cultural, and environmental reasons. So we should be shifting towards local plans. Thank you. And apologies if I would be messed up the open Q&A session.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Time is up. Thank you so much for a collaborative and insightful discussion. Let us move on to the next topic.
For more information, we'd like to welcome Rita to take it away.
Today, I would like to discuss the topic that is crucial for informing carbon credit. So what are carbon credit? Carbon credit, also known as carbon offset, are permits that allow the holder to emit a certain amount of greenhouse gases. While the permit greenhouse gas, we often refer to this carbon dioxide. Carbon credit actually encompasses all types of greenhouse gas emissions. Typically, on credit allows the emission of 1 ton of carbon. Now, how do carbon credit work? Let's take a look back at the Kyoto Protocol of 1997. This was the first major international agreement aimed at reducing carbon emissions. It reduced the considerable of emission trading and carbon credit, enabling countries to buy and sell greenhouse gas emission allowance. More countries, states, and companies are engaging in carbon market, driven by climate commitment and corporate sustainability goals. This reveals a growing awareness of the importance of reducing carbon footprint and fulfilling corporate responsibility. In summary, the gold carbon credit system is a crucial effort to reduce emission loss and economic incentives. While this obtains integrity are actively discussed, ongoing importance are essential. Thank you for your attention, and there is a question for you. Do you agree that rich countries should not be allowed to buy carbon credit from a poor country? Do you reducing their pollution? Please raise your green card if you agree, and raise your red card if you disagree. Are you ready? In 3, 2, 1, go. Seven countries said agree, while 3 countries said they disagree. Thanks your delegate.
For this topic, we will have the following speakers again when you have 2 minutes to speak. Let's start by hearing from the representative of South Africa.
South Africa is agreeing this issue. So we strongly support the prohibition of wealthy countries from purchasing carbon credits to evade their emission to reduction responsibility. This practice does not effectively address the root problem and shifts the burden of emission reduction onto a developing country like ours. South Africa is already facing severe impact from climate change, and when wealthy nations resort to this approach, it exacerbates our vulnerability. True environmental responsibility must be implemented within the burden of wealthy nations. Only then can we promote global sustainable development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Following that, I would like to invite a speaker from the Philippines to share their thoughts.
As a developing country, it is a tough decision to whether sell carbon credits or not, because on the bright side, the money received could be of help for adaptation projects as it can be another source of income. However, I think that granting developed countries permission to buy carbon credits would just discourage them from adopting more sustainable practices to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. It would just push them to abuse their allowed carbon credits as they are assured that they could just purchase them from developing countries if in any case they exceed. Moreover, it would demotivate them to transition to more renewable energies. Purchasing more carbon credits could cover the fact that they do produce high greenhouse gas emissions because they are permitted to do so. But if we look at it, they've gone beyond what they should be producing. So I think that mutually practicing to use within the allotted carbon credits would be the best action for both developed and developing countries. They shouldn't sell nor purchase carbon credits from other countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Next, please welcome the representative from Canada.
Hello. So, in terms of carbon credits, Canada's Strategic Innovation Funds of 8 billion Net Zero Accelerator Fund, an approach to expedite decarbonization projects with large emitters and scale up clean technology has been taking over. This approach helps companies to adopt and clean technologies and improve energy efficiency. In line with this, I believe that rich countries should not be allowed to buy carbon credits because it nullifies their emission without actually reducing their pollution. Without a limit, countries can endlessly buy more carbon credits and might not do their best to reduce their emission, which undermines the global goal to net zero goals. Canada's plan can be a possible approach for other countries as well. Instead of buying, funds should be directed toward investing sustainable resources and plans that drive a true transition to a low carbon economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. After that, I would like to the delegate from Representative Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, dear Chair. We, as a delegation of Saudi Arabia, think that the richer countries and who are able to buy carbon credits, they should be able to buy carbon credits solely for the reason that it doesn't have any impact on the total pollution that is being made. And to just remember the fact that we can have more economical benefit from this. For example, our country, Saudi Arabia, massively relies on fossil fuel usage and other natural oils and gases to like sustain their economy. And we have to remember that if we didn't have benefit from such agreement, we would have lesser funds and we would have a slower, a worse society after all, because our economic strength comes from this. And we have to recognize that with this power and with this economical strength that we find from the carbon credits, we have been able to quite literally renovate the Middle East and North African region without the help of any global initiatives or any global powers. So it is a force to be reckoned with. We can use this power for the good. And if we don't, we will have to, as the other delegates have suggested, we will have to just give it from our pockets, and just giving money is totally fine by our books. And we have invested $5 billion into global initiatives about climate change so far, but we have to recognize that at some point this will be burdening our citizens, this will be burdening our people, and in the end, we will be just sacrificing the comfort and the happiness of our people in exchange to, not because just because we are not allowed to buy any carbon credits. So our proposal is that we benefit more from carbon credits, and in total impact, it doesn't change anything. And just assuming that we won't change because it's easier, we can endlessly buy carbon credits, which is not true. That is not a fact. We just see it as a tool to a cleaner and a more gradual revolution. So we believe that the ones who are able to buy carbon credits, they should be kept able to buy carbon credits, and in the end, they should use that economic power to make local renovations, regional renovations. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Dear Chair and other United Nations delegates, we as the Japan do not agree with the idea that rich countries should not be allowed to buy carbon credits from to reduce pollution, developing the reduce pollution. First of all, what is the carbon credit? A carbon credit is a document that represents the right to reduce the emissions of 1 ton carbon dioxide or an equivalent greenhouse gas. When countries or companies do not take sufficient measures to meet their emissions target, they can purchase these credits and finance emissions reduction projects carried out elsewhere. Why do we carbon credits? As in Japan, we are pursuing the following goals by purchasing carbon credits. Your, to reach emissions reduction targets determined within framework of international agreement more quickly. Since long-term emission reducing projects taking the time to yield results, purchasing carbon credits to reduce emission in the short term might be an option. Uh, Proceeds from obtaining carbon credits can be used to invest in low carbon technologies such as renewable energy. As a Japan, we do not receive the carbon loans from developing countries for this reason. We are on the side accepting that it should be taken. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you, delegate.
Now it is open to for 5 minutes.
South Korea, do you have any question?
Thank you for the recognition, Chair. I would like to ask a question. The rich countries are a high contributor to the world's carbon emission rates. Hence, won't asking them to support the developing countries demotivate rich countries to become carbon free due to lack of funds?
Can we have the question again?
Can I repeat the question, Chair?
Chair Board, is it all right if we just discuss this topic back and forth with the South Korean delegate, if possible? Okay, just to answer the general question that was sent in the chat, we agree with this question, and we think that just putting too much effort on the rich countries, which were already doing pretty much nothing, which are like the Western countries, obviously not the Middle Eastern ones. We would like to say that just constantly putting the burden and just constantly expecting the Western countries and the rich countries to do something is something that is not realistic, and we shouldn't be waiting just and sitting to for people to take action and to give money. But as a perfect example, the carbon credit system actually makes perfect sense because it incentivizes the Western countries to give some sort of funding, like to make trades with developing countries, which already supports the developing countries a lot. And in the end, it doesn't change the total pollution that is being done to the world. So we think that the South Korean delegate asked a great question, and we think that just pushing and saying they should give money is not an appropriate solution.
I agree with the delegate of Saudi Arabia. Agreeing to my question also that rich countries are often in dilemma of their own issues and problems. So it would be better if they focus on themselves rather than pestering themselves to focus on other countries, other developing countries, and asking them to give them funds. So it's better if the rich countries focus on themselves and help themselves at first and then help the developing countries. Thank you.
Okay, please. Question, Senegal.
So I have a question for Saudi Arabia and South Korea. Why do you think that wealthy nations shouldn't provide support to developing countries when they are the main reason that such developing countries suffer the brunt of climate change? Wealthy countries, developed countries actually have contributed mostly to the climate situation at hand. So I think that developing countries should receive some form of support. Not we're not asking you to donate a lot, just some sort of support would be beneficial.
Okay, South Korea, please answer the question.
Dear delegate, you are a Middle Eastern country. Considering you're a Middle Eastern country and that Middle Eastern countries right now are at war, please look at yourselves first instead of blaming everything to Western countries, because Western countries are still contributing less to the carbon emissions than the Middle Eastern countries and the countries at war right now. Not to mention many civil wars happening, wars between Israel and Palestine. All of these wars are greatly contributing to the pollution and carbon emissions. So instead of blaming that the rich countries aren't providing funds, because they already are. Countries like Germany and many other are already providing you funds, but all the times, not all the times, they're consumed rightly. Many times they're corrupted the funds. So it's better if better if you focus on yourselves and rightly allocating your own funds to focus on this problem.
Thank you, delegate. Please.
Do we have the right to speak at the moment?
Oh,
Chair, I think you're muted.
Time's up, so let's go to next part.
okay, topic 3 is about the loss and damage felt. Cool.
At the UN Climate Finance in November 2022, countries finally agreed to set up a global fund for loss and damage. This fund is meant to help poorer countries that don't emit much carbon but are hit hardest by climate disasters. For example, Pakistan faced risks for floods, heat waves, and certain agricultural conditions. Additionally, other countries in Africa like Mauritania and Kenya are experiencing severe storms, floods, and other climate-related challenges. All of them are developing countries and are suffering from the disasters of climate change. Meanwhile, the counter to climate change are in industrious countries like China, United States, and Russia, which with facing these situation, some people might make a statement that those rich countries should be responsible for the problem. Furthermore, there there aren't any strong commitment to reduce carbon emissions, and some countries even seem to be back well away from their proposed targets. So, while there's agreement on helping those affected by climate change, it highlights a big conditional countries are willing to pay for the damage but aren't taking enough addition to cut emissions in the first place. So my question is, do you agree that rich countries should pay more money to developing countries for the damage caused by climate change? If you agree, please show your green card. If you not agree, please show your red card. In three, two, one, go. Great. Based on this group, there are six countries named that support policy. On the other hand, there are zero named that disagree with positions. Thank you, Delegate.
Sorry, please wait the host. Host, the internet is not correct.
Sorry. Let's begin with South Korea.
Thank you, esteemed Chair, for your recognition. The Republic of Korea is deeply concerned about the devastating impacts of climate change, particularly on vulnerable developing nations. The scientific evidence is clear. The historical emissions of industrialized countries have disproportionately contributed to global warming and climate induced disasters. It is a matter of climate justice that those responsible for the crisis should bear the cost of addressing its consequences. Developed countries, with their wealth and technological capabilities, have a moral and ethical obligation to provide financial and technical assistance to developing nations. However, however, the Republic of Korea would like to propose that a system based on the contribution of carbon emissions by each country should decide the amount of funds a country spends on developing nations to provide for loss and damage. This way, no developing country will corrupt the funds they gain by uh, they gain by the rich countries. This support should go beyond traditional climate finance and encompass compensation for loss and damage. Vulnerable countries are facing increasingly several severe climate impacts such as extreme weather events, sea level rise, and biodiversity loss. These impacts result in significant economic losses, displacement, and human suffering. The Republic of Korea calls upon developed countries to establish a dedicated fund to address loss and damage. This fund should be adequately resourced and accessible to vulnerable nations, enabling them to recover from climate disasters, build resilience, and adapt to a climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegate. Next, I'd like to invite a representative from Germany to speak.
Yes, all right, thank you. Uh, as for the question that do you agree that rich countries should pay more money to developing countries for the damage caused by climate change? I agree. I believe that rich countries should take responsibility for the damage caused by climate change, which is usually part of their own doing. As for Germany, Germany is the largest importer of coal and second largest producer of coal within the European Union, which contributes to a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. But right, as of currently, Germany is helping fund the developing countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegate. Following that, please welcome the speaker from Argentina.
From Argentina perspective, wealthy countries should pay more for damage caused by climate change. Historically, rich nations have been the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. Disproportionations affects developing countries like ours. For instance, climate impacts in Argentina, such as droughts and floods, could cost up to 3.5 billion announced by 2015. According to the World Bank, this burden arises from the historical emissions of wealthier nations. Internationally, agreements like the Paris Agreement highlights the richer countries have a responsibility to support developing nations.
Now, Let's have the representative from Slovakia share their insights.
Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, climate change has caused irreversible damage to vulnerable nations, particularly those with limited resources, to address its impacts. Slovakia supports the principle that contributions to the fund should be based on a country's historical emissions and economic capacity. Developed nations with a greater sense of historical emissions bear a moral and ethical responsibility to compensate for the damages caused by their activities. As a part of the European Union, Slovakia is committed to supporting collective efforts to ensure that the Loss and Damage Fund is adequately resourced and operationalized effectively. However, Slovakia stresses the importance of accountability and monitoring the use of these funds. Mechanisms should be established to track how the funds are allocated and ensure that they are directly benefited communities affected by climate change. This includes funding for disaster relief, infrastructure rebuilding, and capacity building initiatives that enhance resilience to future climate risks. Slovakia also emphasizes the role of international organizations in managing the Loss and Damage Fund. Institutions such as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, can provide the necessary oversight and coordination to ensure that resources are distributed equitably and efficiently. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, delegate. Finally, I'd like to invite a speaker representing Senegal to make a statement.
Okay. So Senegal strongly sides with this statement as it is already experiencing the harsh realities of climate change. We have coastal erosion, droughts, agricultural loss, as well as flooding. According to the African Development Bank, we lose $7 billion to $15 billion annually to climate change, which is expected to rise to $50 billion by 2040. For Senegal, a developing country, these losses are not just economic, they affect our food security, water access, and the livelihood of millions residing here. The establishment of a loss and damage fund is crucial. Rich countries, which are responsible for over 70% of excess global emissions, the developing world that it is the developing world that bears the brunt of these impacts. For Senegal, the fund represents justice because it is due time that the developed countries recognize the harm they inflicted on our communities by crises that we did not create. By funding commitments, uh, by funding commitments, they take responsibility for their actions and help us to switch to cleaner and greener energies. Establishing loss and damage fund will help to account for the loss and damage costs, which are accounted to reach $580 billion annually by 2030 in developing nations. We cannot wait for incremental solutions anymore. Therefore, we urge developed nations to fulfill their obligations and ensure that the loss and damage fund is adequately financed to help nations like Senegal recover, rebuild, and protect our people. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. The discussion is becoming more interesting, and let's dig a deeper by remove to the next topic of discussion. Now it's open Q&A for 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, now let's welcome Philippines to present their statement.
I would just like to ask how these compensations can be fairly quantified. Should it consider the current economic standing of the country or the damages affected in the affected country, or should it be based on the cumulative emissions of the historically industrialized nations?
Please, Saudi Arabia answer the question first.
Thank you for the recognition. We believe that the measures of, you know, what the loss and found, which we don't agree with in the first place, but we would like to say that we shouldn't be standing from the historical bias and the social bias only. We believe that, yes, things have been done and some countries are ethically more responsible, but it is not time to discuss any amount of ethics, not right now. So instead of what has been done and what they should pay for it, we should be solely focusing on like a common but differentiated responsibilities, which is like, for example, we should make smaller groups, smaller regions, so that the countries are more responsible about what they are doing, because some countries acknowledge the threat of, the climate change, but they refuse to do so because it's not beneficial for them, because it has such a big scale. So in like regional projects, they will have to take on that project because it'll be actively harming them, and if they don't, and in the end, like for example, as Saudi Arabia, we have a massive capacity for revolution, and we realized this vision and we renovated the whole, we have taken initiatives to revolute the entire Middle Eastern and the North African region. So we have the capacity to do so, and we do, not because of historical bias and not because of what has been done. So we just have to ignore that, even if it's like ethically questionable at this point, and we should be focusing on what can be done as immediately as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Please, South Korea to answer the question.
Is the delegate of South Korea also allowed to ask a question? Excuse me, Chair. Is the delegate of South Korea also allowed to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. So the ROK believes that funds can be quantified by categorizing certain factors of the countries, like the economy of the country and the loss and damage caused by climate change. However, this does not still mean that the countries will not corrupt the funds, or if they really require it, and instead of putting their own funds in the climate, in the damage that is being done, they are totally dependent on the rich countries, which will only result in destruction, their own country's destruction in the future. And the Republic of Korea would also like to ask a question. Would a system based on the contribution of carbon emissions by each country that decides the amount of funds a country spends on developing nations to provide for loss and damage help eradicate this issue of quantifying funds also?
Okay, please, Saudi Arabia to answer the question.
Thank you for the recognition. We think that is a nice idea to consider the carbon emissions and what each country is responsible for. But as we mentioned, we believe that it is not really something that we can keep track of, because approximately we have hundreds of countries, including the rich ones, who can manipulate the statistics and who have immense power to change what is like, they can just change this. And it is on such a large scale, to the point where we think that just focusing on what they do, like the carbon emissions, what they're responsible of, we can't keep track of that. We can't keep track of what everybody like is responsible for. So instead of just focusing on what they're doing, we should definitely, while they should definitely minimize their carbon emissions, we should be focusing on how they can revert the effect and how beneficial it will be for them. Because climate change is a bad thing, and in the end, it'll be harmful for everyone. So instead of just punishing people using social, historical, and ethical biases, we should be showing these countries, especially the rich ones, that how beneficial it will be in the end for them to provide for this and how they should definitely put their resources on this. But to answer the question simply, we don't think like the just you know seeing how much carbon they produce makes for a good system to allocate loss and repair funds.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Oh, sorry, the delegate from Senegal. The time is up, so we need to move on to the next.
Okay, sure, no problem. Thank you.
And topic 4 is National Adaptation Plans (NAPS). Let's welcome Peggy to introduce this topic.
UNEP and GEP assist countries all over the world in their efforts to create national adaptation plans. UNEP's focus is to strengthen capacities to generate medium to long-term climate science evidence to inform NAP policy and planning, support the ministry responsible for climate change adaptations to engage in the consultative process with all key stakeholders, different ministers, local governments, civil society partners. Activity and quality scores in season, including chambers of commerce and similar economic grouping. Also, UNEP assists countries to better integrate NAP process into their national development plans and budget. The two overreaching objectives of NAPS are to reduce vulnerability to the impacts of climate change by building a productive policy and resist in integrate apply into new and existing policy and program enabling change. Now my question is, do you agree that developing countries are not getting enough support from rich countries to make good climate plans for the future? If you agree, raise your green card. If you disagree, raise your red card. In 3, 2, 1, go. Two countries say they agree, well, uh, say they agree, but two countries say they disagree. Thank you, delegate.
For this topic, let's hear for this topic, let's hear from our five speakers. Let's begin by listening to a representative of South Korea. South Africa.
Hello everyone, and I'm sorry about that. My computer is power off, so I use the host microphone. Let's start. We must highlight the challenge developing country facing in formulity development. Developing country face in formulity affect climate plans, primarily due to insufficient financial and technical assistance. South Africa needs greater international funding to improve infrastructure, state capacity. Additionally, technology transfer and policy support are crucial for our climate response effort. Global cooperation is essential to ensure that our climate plans are both effective and sustainable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. I would like to invite the speaker from the Philippines.
In the Philippine context, 72.29% of the pledged 75% greenhouse gas emission reduction is conditional, relying on support under the Paris Agreement. This highlights that developing countries like the Philippines need assistance from developed nations to contribute meaningfully to global climate action. In line with this, there is also a pledge of mobilizing $100 billion annually by 2020 to supposedly help strengthen the defenses against climate change of the developing countries. However, in the Philippines, the finance secretary have stated that these actions have been hardly transpiring, and they have emphasized the need for these developed countries to pay for grants, investments, and subsidies in climate vulnerable countries. So I think that the Philippines is not getting what they have been promised, or this is not enough, which hinders them to achieve the 75% cut by 2030. However, on a wider landscape, although there might have been supports from developed countries, it is not enough. It is insufficient as comparable to the damages caused by climate change in the Philippines. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Afterwards, I would like to invite the delegate from Canada.
Hello. Upon the implementation of the Paris Agreement in 2016, Canada pledged to give 2.65 billion as its commitment in the international climate finance to support developing countries. Over the first 5 years, 128 climate finance projects have been funded, helping 10.5 million people increase resilience to climate change and prevent over 243 megatons of greenhouse gas emissions. And in June 2021, Canada decided to double its finance commitment to 5.3 billion over the next 5 years. This big jump in the finances is already enough to help developing countries in their transitioning to low carbon and climate resilience economies. Canada's climate finance commitment has even went beyond the said commitment, providing a total of 8.7 billion already in the years 2015 to 2022. Therefore, while other claims that developing countries are not receiving enough support from countries, in the case of Canada, considered to be a rich country, is already giving a sufficient amount of support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. Then, please represent. Let's welcome the representative from Saudi Arabia.
Thank you for the recognition, Chair. And to put it simply, we believe that as the Saudi Arabian country and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we've been doing so much more than any country could possibly do. And the overall statement that the developing countries are just not receiving any amount of help and it's not enough is obviously so untrue. Because we've been, as is with the delegate of Canada has pointed out, the rich countries have been giving billions of dollars to this cause, and a billion is no small number. You could probably create 10 countries with that amount of money from nothing. And as the South Korean delegate has suggested, it is very obvious that some developing countries simply lack the bureaucratic and ideological belief and vision to properly mobilize these funds. And as we have mentioned, just bringing all these ideas together, a global initiative really lacks just putting those funds to proper use, because the developing countries on their own, when they're not checked properly, when it's like not in a small group, they just misuse those funds. And they need better bureaucratic help, better social help, better governmental help. And we can achieve this kind of thing with more regional initiatives, which we have done in the past, as we mentioned, with the North African and the Middle Eastern region. So we don't agree that developing countries are not getting any amount of help with our initiatives, speaking like for our behalf, and in global scale as well. They are getting so much money and so much bureaucratic help, but the vision and the social progress is just not enough to properly use those funds. So we should be focusing on more focus points, like singular areas to improve on. Thank you.